The language of today is an example that has shattered everything we know about natural languages. It has no past tense, no future tense, no numbers. It has the smallest number of sounds of any other languages. It does not have words for colors, and what's worse, it seems that it's lacking a fundamental feature found in any language, potentially breaking one of the most famous linguist hypotheses on how languages even work and exist. Today, we're talking about Pirahã, which seems to be an impossible language, yet it is real. Before diving into the craziest feature that Pirahã has to offer, let me tell you a bit more about the people, because this will help you understand some crazy aspects of the language. The Pirahã people live mainly on the banks of the Maiche River in Humaitá and Manicore in the state of Amazonas in Brazil. They are mainly an isolated tribe, but they do have contacts with other groups from time to time. Living in the Amazon is likely one of the reasons for the lack of future or past tense, and the focus the Pirahã have on the present. But I'll come back to that in more details in a few minutes. There are about 900 people in the Pirahã community today, but that number was lower than that before. It was estimated to be around 300 in 2000 and as low as 90 in the 1920s and 1970s. So the population has seen a lot of growth in the recent decades. Pirahã is the only surviving dialect of the Mura language, so it's the last language of this family, making it an isolate. The other languages and dialects of this family have died during the last centuries, mainly because the different groups who spoke them switched to Portuguese. This makes Pirahã even more unique, because they are the last group of a language family, making the language stand out even more. The Pirahã are mainly monolingual speakers, although some of them know some Portuguese. This wasn't always the case, and it's kind of a recent thing. And even though their community is rather small, their language is not in a danger of extinction. Not many people have studied the Pirahã and their language, but there is one person that is credited for most of the work done on the language, Daniel Everett. And that's a name that will appear quite often in this video, as he is the main source of information about the language and its people. Everett spent many months at different moments in time with the Pirahã to try to learn their language and understand their culture better. It first started as missionary work, but Everett ended up writing his master thesis and PhD dissertation on the language. His master thesis focused on the phonology of the language, while his dissertation tackled the syntax of Pirahã. I also need to mention two facts regarding linguists that have studied this language. First, there are not many linguists who actually have field experience with the Pirahã and their language. Second, it has been described as a difficult language to learn from people who have studied it, making the data even harder to access. One thing about Pirahã that makes it stand out is its limited phoneme inventory. It has one of the smallest phoneme inventory of all languages in the world. It only has 3 vowels and 8 consonants. This makes a total of 11 phonemes. Now, some claims mention that Pirahã could have as low as 7 consonants, making it the language with the smallest phoneme inventory. The consonant k is debated as being an allophone of the sequence he. What this means is that when the sequence he is used in a sentence, it might be realized as a k sound. So, for example, the word here could be pronounced as here or k. Allophones in a language are various phonetic realizations of a phoneme in a language, which do not contribute to distinctions of meaning. It's just different ways to express the same phoneme. To give you an example in English, think of the sound p in potato and in plate. Both are the same phoneme p, but one is realized p, potato, and the other p, plate. Now, something that may reduce the phoneme inventory further is that there is a difference between women and men's speech in the community. The phoneme s is only used by men, meaning women have one less phoneme. A speech form that is limited to gender is not exclusive to Pirahã and actually can be found in various languages across the globe, but the fact that women end up with a very small phoneme inventory is quite unique. There is plenty to talk about gender speech, but that might be for another video. Something you may have noticed in this short inventory is the fact that there is no nasal consonants found in the language, which is a bit of an oddity as nasal consonants are very common in most languages. They are basic consonants of most languages in the world, and only a few languages in the world, which is likely around 13, don't have them. That's 13 out of 7,000. That is quite unusual. So far, we saw how Pirahã may seem rather simple in terms of its phonology, but that's actually far from the truth. Sure, it has a short number of phonemes, but the phonology of a language is actually more complex than consonants and vowels. First thing I want to mention is that there are 3 tones in Pirahã: high, mid, and low. So we have to add tones to the phoneme inventory, which already adds a bit of difficulty. But where things are getting quite interesting is the fact that this tonal language can be spoken, sung, hummed, or even whistled. And it's not just like we do in English, it's not just singing or humming. These have a phonological value that can change the meaning of words. So singing, humming, and whistling follow some rigorous rules. Alright, we are already seeing how Pirahã stands out from other languages in the world. But that's just the beginning here. On top of that, we can talk about the phonetic aspects of the language, because the realization of these different phonemes is wild. I already mentioned the allophonic aspects of some phonemes. Despite its small phoneme inventory, there are a lot of allophones in the language, like a lot. And some of these allophones are crazy, to the point that one of them is unique to Pirahã. The phoneme G has the following allophones. And the last one is only found in Pirahã, to the point that we don't really have recordings of that. Nowhere else. It's called lateral alveolar labiolingual double flap. Just the name itself tells you how uncommon it is. And there are plenty of other fun realizations of this small phoneme inventory. One unique aspect of Pirahã is its limited kinship system. In most languages, the words mom and dad are different. That's not the case in Pirahã. There is one common word for both, maihi, and I'm sorry for my pronunciation, it's probably terrible. And this word is also used for grandparents or elders. That's it. It cannot be simpler than that. You do have a word for son, hoaigi, and one word for daughter, kai. There's no word for brothers or sisters, just one for siblings, haaigi. Then we have pihi, used for orphans or stepchildren. And that's all the kinship terminology in the language. Another uncommon aspect of Pirahã, I know that's already a lot, is that there is no plural. And this is a unique feature of the language which has only been found in one other language, Warlpiri in Australia. There is just no distinction between singular and plural, which also means that there are no personal plural pronouns. There is no we, no plural you, and no they. It's one of the simplest personal pronoun systems found in languages across the world. And what's even more strange about the pronoun system is that it seems that it has been borrowed from another language called Modern Tupi. Borrowing pronouns from another language is really uncommon. And let's be honest, a bit strange. Pronouns are usually one of the bases of a language. They don't change as fast as other words. They are usually quite common and not really borrowed. Think about how often you use I, or he, or she, or you. They are usually at the core of a language. But it seems that it's not the case in Pirahã, and you may have noticed my use of hypothetic words, because while we can see similarities, this has not been fully proven yet, but the evidence goes strongly in this direction. Modern Tupi and Tenharim, both belonging to the Tupi-Guarani language family, were once contact languages used by the Pirahã to communicate with other groups, so it's very likely that this borrowing of pronouns come from there. I mentioned that there is no plural pronouns, but the Pirahã can still refer to groups of people. In order to mention plural pronouns, the base pronouns can be combined. For example, To say we, it's a combination of I and you. Besides all these rather uncommon features, Pirahã is also a language without a number system, without names for colors, or a past or future tense. Let's first talk about the lack of a number system. That seems quite strange, right? So, to count, the Pirahã will describe if there is just a few or many of something, using words like bigger or smaller. And that is also something that is shown by a lack of physical sign. Let's say you want to say a number like 5 with your fingers, you just show 5 fingers, right? Well, they don't do that. So they simply have a comparison of quantities. Because of trade with other groups in the region, the Pirahã were wondering if others were taking advantage of them. So at one point, the Pirahãs wanted to learn to count, in the hopes of maybe avoiding other people cheating on them for trade. They asked Daniel Everett to teach them basic numbers, and the result was quite surprising. They just gave up. It was too difficult for them. Even though they enjoyed the lessons by Everett and they had a good time, they still could not learn how to count. And it's not like they tried for like 5 minutes and just gave up. They tried for months, so for a long period of time, and they put efforts into it. They just could not get the concept of counting. It was too unfamiliar for them. Before talking about our next point, there's one thing about the number system that I need to highlight. In a paper by Michael Frank, Daniel Everett, Evelina Fedorenko, and Edward Gibson called Number as a Cognitive Technology, Evidence from Pirahã Language and Cognition, the authors argue that number words do not change our underlying representations of numbers, but instead are a cognitive technology for keeping track of the cardinality of large sets across time, space, and changes in modality. As such, the argument is that language for exact number is a cultural invention rather than a linguistic universal. Besides the lack of a counting system, it's also interesting to note that words for colors don't really exist in Pirahã. They only have 2 words, one for light, one for dark, and that's how they distinguish most colors. This language feature is not unique to Pirahã and can be found in some other languages, although it's not common. They have no way of using a color word like green or orange. But that does not mean they don't say colors. It just means that they don't have individual names for colors. And they sometimes do describe colors by using a comparison like color of blood to describe red. So they describe and use colors. They just don't have dedicated words for them. Let's look at another unusual feature of Pirahã. Well, Pirahã does not have past tenses or future tenses. And this may sound really unusual. And let me add here that it does not mean that they cannot express the past or the future. Think of English, for example. English has no future tense, yet people can still talk about the future. Well, in Pirahã it's pretty much the same. They may lack these tenses, but they can still express this idea. But here, this is where things get even more interesting. They don't really do that. The present tense plays a bit of a different part. It also emphasizes the living in the present lives of the people. They don't focus on the past or future too much, but more on the actual moment. They have stories about the past, and those are actually associated with an individual. And if this individual dies, the story associated with them disappears. So while they can talk about the past, it's also kind of connected to the present, which in this case is the lively state of an individual that is connected to a story. So the use of the past is possible, but it's also marked by a real aspect, or should I say evidentiality aspect. Someone witnessed the action. And if that someone dies, then the story associated with them will also disappear. And this evidentiality aspect plays an important part of the language. It emphasizes something that was observed. The aspect is marked by a suffix, and on the other hand, Pirahã also has a suffix to mark circumstantial evidence, something based on hearing it from someone else. So Pirahã makes a distinction between hearsay, deduction, complete certainty, and assumption of direct knowledge. All of this leads Pirahã people to be concerned mainly with things that fall directly with personal experience, and stories and history do not go beyond the living memory. One last point about this is because Pirahã focuses on the witness hearsay aspects, it leads to interesting situations. Dreaming is perceived a bit differently, because a dream is something that one is witnessing. Then in Pirahã, it means the dream is technically true, as it has been witnessed by someone. Now, that might be a bit of an oversimplification of the situation, and I feel like we're moving away from linguistics, but it does sound interesting how dreams may be perceived very differently, culturally speaking at least. With so many interesting features, Pirahã has been an interesting case providing evidence against linguistic relativity. Linguistic relativity, or the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, is the idea that the language a person speaks influences how they perceive, categorize, and think about the world. This theory has been dismissed in many ways and will probably be the object of a future video. In our case, Pirahã has been one of many examples proving the limits of this theory, and this mainly through its lack of a counting system. Everett mentions the following: a total lack of exact quantity language did not prevent the Pirahã from accurately performing a task which relied on the exact numerical equivalence of large sets. As this quote mentions, the lack of a counting system does not mean Pirahã cannot comprehend specific quantities or express large quantities, and that the language does not influence their perception. The expression of numbers is simply different. Okay, so by now you probably have noticed that Pirahã is a unique language, featuring a lot of unusual features. Some are unique to it, others are still found in some languages around the world, but only a handful. Let's now talk about the most controversial aspect of the language, one that has challenged assumptions about what languages are. Pirahã does not present recursion in the language, and recursion has been perceived as a centerpiece of languages and as a central part of the general concept of language. This lack of recursion is what makes Pirahã sound like an impossible language. But what does that even mean? So recursion in a language is the ability to repeat a grammatical structure inside another one. Think of the following sentence: I saw the cat that scared my dog. In this sentence, I actually have two sentences combined. The cat that scared my dog, I saw the cat. We have a sentence inside another one. And I could repeat this process pretty much indefinitely. I saw the cat that scared my dog that I love. I saw the cat that scared my dog, the dog that I love. This is what recursion is. It's often described as a core feature, if not the only core feature, of languages by many linguists, and especially Noam Chomsky. Chomsky is the father of universal grammar, which he has developed and improved over the years. To keep it simple, this theory states that languages have a common and determined underlying structure, and recursion is in the center of that. So, why does this matter? It matters because Pirahã seems to be a language that does not have recursion. If true, it will go against Chomsky's universal grammar, which is one of the most accepted theory regarding how languages work. It also goes against every other example of languages we know. It is potentially an example that breaks everything we know about languages and how our brains process and use them. Many linguists argue against this aspect of Pirahã, and so far, most of the data about the language comes from Everett, which is a limit to his theory about Pirahã lacking recursion. However, he's also the first one to say that people should study the language to get more data and prove him right, or wrong. The few studies on Pirahã and recursion mention that it's possible that the language does not have recursion. But, to have a real answer, we still need more data and more research on the topic. Pirahã is clearly a unique language. There are so many features that make it sound incredible and that have challenged how we understand languages. But there is still a lot of mysteries to uncover, and not many people have actually studied the language. While Everett is the main researcher credited for most of the work on the language, he's also one to mention that more research needs to be done to confirm or deny his hypothesis. Especially when it comes to the lack of recursion, because being able to prove that recursion is not a part of the language will be an informative and important step in our general understanding of languages.